Hello, boaters. It's Jim from Raymarine with a special Wednesday edition of Raymarine Live. Today, we have a very special guest on the line with me. We have Geoff Holt, a longtime Raymarine Ambassador. So let's bring Geoff in right away so we can introduce him. There you are. Welcome, Geoff.
Good evening, Jim. How are you?
Evening. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
So, Geoff, you've been with Raymarine for quite a long time. I think your relationship with us goes back, at least 20 years, if not more than that.
Yeah, I was looking through some old photos earlier today, and I think it goes back to the early 90s.
Wow.
I know I don't look that old, but it sure does.
You look great. Well, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. And you're quite a fascinating character because you have just an immense amount of experience on the water in all sorts of different venues and different experiences. And I was really excited that you could come out and join us tonight and share with us, kind of your on the water journey, because it's really quite remarkable, all the things you've done. I know you've done a lot of ocean sailing. You've done quite a lot now with your foundation that you tell us all about. So we're really excited to hear about it. And we're really, really happy to have you as an ambassador and such a longtime friend to Raymarine.
Well, thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm here in the south of England. It's a lovely, warm summer's evening. I hope everyone in front of them has got themselves a little tipple. That's water, I promise you. I'll save the good stuff till later. Yeah, and I'm going to spend the next 25-30 minutes or so, Jim, telling a bit of my story, really, why I do what I do. For those people that don't know, I'm actually sat in a wheelchair. I'm paralyzed from the chest down. And as you say, sailing has been my passion all my life, and it continues today. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really remarkable, and I'm sure you'll tell us a little bit through your story, but just to understand that you don't let anything hold you back. You're still active, and you're sailing and boating and enjoying things and sharing your passion with the community there too. It's just really remarkable.
Yeah, well, I guess that kind of takes us on to the story, really. I guess without further ado, if you're happy, Jim, I'll dive on in, as they
Absolutely.
say, and take it from here. What I'm hoping is that if people watching at home have any questions, by all means, put them in the comments. We can collate those during the talk, and I'm more than happy to answer them as honestly as I can towards the end. But for right now, bear with me. I'm going to plow on. I've got some great images, and it's quite a story, I tell you. So, yeah, that's me, Geoff Holt. Like all good sailing stories, they start young. My mum and dad had a sailboat here on the south coast of England. It wasn't a particularly big sailboat, but I was one of those lucky children that, well, I realise now I was lucky. At the time, I wanted to be out playing with my friends, not going sailing, to foreign parts and, going away for the weekend. I wanted to be playing with my friends. Of course, looking back, it was a wonderful childhood. And over time, I obviously was learning all those skills that I was to use in later life as a yachtsman. So, come the age of 16, I left school. I didn't have any qualifications. I jumped on a yacht and sailed across the Atlantic. Beneath that fender, and I'm not sure if you can read that, but the boat's called Rampant, and it's registered in St. Louis, Missouri. And she was the first yacht I'd sailed across the Atlantic. And this photo was taken on my 17th birthday. And I promise you, as a 17-year-old, it was a very fitting name for a boat, sailing all around the world. So over the next 3 years, 16, 17, 18, I sailed the ocean a few times. I was very fortunate to sail the Atlantic 3 times, kind of over 30,000 miles. I think I clocked up by the time I was 18 years old. And there's an example of some of the routes. The white one was 6 months in the Med. Then the orange and the yellow I did when I was 16, and the blue one I did when I was 18 years old. So I had a really promising career ahead of me as a professional yachtsman, and that was going to be my life. That was all planned out, really. So I'm not showing you this photo to show off my youthful good looks or the fact that once upon a time I had long blonde hair. I'm showing you this photo because it was taken on the 4th of September 1984. Crikey, that's nearly 38 years ago. And the reason I know it was taken on the 4th of September 1984 is because it was taken the day before this photograph. This photo was taken on the 5th of September 1984. And, you know, just as we all remember where we are when bad things happen to us, I'm never going to forget that date in a hurry. What you're looking at is me lying in a hospital bed in Puerto Rico. Between the previous photo and this one, I'd flown out to the British Virgin Islands, specifically to the island of Tortola. I had completed some employment work papers. I'd gone to a beach, one of the most beautiful beaches in the Virgin Islands, called Cane Garden Bay. I'd ran down the beach until I was waist deep in water. I put my hands above my head, dived into the water, and hit my head on a sandbar. And I broke my neck between the shoulder blades, C5-6. And from that moment on, I became paralyzed from the chest down. I have a little bit of arm movement. I've got no triceps, so I can't push or, you know, pull towards me very easily. And I had to learn to get used to spending my life as a young person with a severe spinal cord injury. I was eventually flown home back to somewhere called Salisbury in the UK. They airlifted me back from Puerto Rico about a month after the accident. And I spent a year in hospital in Salisbury, rehabbing, learning how to live my life again as someone with a spinal injury, learning how to, you know, pick up a glass, learning how to brush my hair, learning how to get my wallet out. I still can't do that for some strange reason. And after a year, I left hospital. I took something with me. I stole something from the hospital. I took my nurse with me. I took Elaine. Elaine Osborne was my nurse, and she's at the back of that photograph there, right at the back. And that was 38 years ago, and we've been married 36 years now. So that was certainly worth paying my tax contributions for, if nothing else. So, like all young people, I had aspirations to, you know, start family, get a good job, settle down, holidays, house, all that stuff. One thing that was for certain, and that's, as someone with a severe spinal cord injury, I wasn't going to do that anytime soon in yachting. So I retrained in the dark art of computing. This was about 1986, 87, when computers were still, you know, not very few people knew how they worked, or even fewer people had one in their home. And I specialized in database management, and I was to get a job for a very small accountancy firm at the time. They were called at the time Deloitte Haskins and Sells. And over the next 15 years, I worked my way up to becoming head of marketing and business development for the Southwest regional offices for the firm many of you may now know as Deloitte. I'm not going to labor this much, but that period in my time was really important to me because I learned all of my skills in marketing about client focus, about putting the customer first, about brand, the importance of brand, and putting together projects and plans on budget. And as we're about to hear, I put those to some good use in years to come. I deliberately chose not to get back in a boat for 7 years. Well, I didn't know it was going to be 7 years. Sailing wasn't part of my life. Sailing was my life, and it felt like a bereavement. So to lose that, very much, it's something that I just felt was never going to sail again. And it would be 7 years before someone said to me, Geoff, there is a type of boat you can sail. I think you'll be able to sail it on your own. And it's called the Challenger Trimaran dinghy. And this really is the first time in 7 years that I got back in a boat. That was the BBC came to film me. Bear in mind, my wife, Elaine, had never seen me sail. She had heard me tell everyone how great I was. But no, of course, I didn't have to back it up. And as she lifted me down into the boat, she just said, my goodness, Geoff, I hope you know what you're doing. And I was worried I was going to hit the warship on the other side of the water. I was worried I would have forgotten how to sail. But once I pulled that main sheet, which is the white rope above my head, which is the accelerator, and once I moved that tiller, the steering, and the boat accelerated across the river. No one was telling me go left, go right, go faster, go slower. I was making all my own decisions. I realized at that point that sailing was my love, and it was something that was in my DNA. It was something that I'd refound it. It was my opportunity that I'd rediscovered sailing, and every opportunity I could, I was going to sail. And from that moment on, between work at Deloitte, every spare moment I had, I sailed that little boat. I even got asked by the national governing body of yachting in the UK, the Royal Yachting Association, to help with their new charity called Sailability, and I became chairman of Sailability for, I think I did that for about 7 or 8 years. This is me when I was chairman of Sailability, and that was one of our ex-prime ministers. He's probably the least memorable of our prime ministers. That is John Major, but he was indeed prime minister for a short time after Margaret Thatcher. So yeah, that was my prime minister moment. Well, Sailability was to give me something quite personal and special. In 2002, my son was born. Now Tim was born healthy, thank goodness. But as Tim got older, he went from crawling, toddling to walking, and he knew that Daddy was a sailor. He came through one morning when he was 4 and said, "Daddy, I want to try sailing. I really want to try sailing." No one on this planet was going to take my son for his first sail other than me, his dad. And because the boats existed, the volunteers existed, that when that moment came, it really was his dad that took him for his first ever sail. And that's me taking Tim, aged 4, for his first ever sail. I should say he's now 20 and he's just gone out the door to the pub. So how times have changed.
That photo is priceless, Geoff. That is
It's lovely,
a remarkable photo.
It's a beautiful, beautiful photo. And it always reminds me as well, the cheekiness of him. I won't bore you too much, but about 10 years ago, I wrote a book. And I was signing copies at the London boat show, this international boat show. And Tim came up with his mum and he said, "Hi, Dad," and he slapped me on the back. About 10 minutes later, a lady came up and said, "Oh, Mr. Holt, you've got a sticky yellow post-it sticky on your back." And I said, "Well, can you read it? I don't have my glasses on." And she read it. And she said, "Oh, I don't think you want me to read this." And I said, "Go on, read it." And she said, it says, "Don't buy his books. They're rubbish." So, anyway, so yeah, but I love him. Of course, I love him dearly. In 1997, I sailed that little trimaran around the Isle of Wight. That is a picture of what's known as the Needles. It's a world famous landmark. And if any of you have heard about the America's Cup, well, the first ever America's Cup was sailed in the Solent, and they would have sailed around the Isle of Wight and the Needles. So the reason it's important in my story is in 97, in fact, I did it in 1992, but it took me about 15 hours. But in 1997, I did it again, and I did it just under 8 hours. Now it's about 60 miles around the Isle of Wight. And as you can see, my little head is only a metre above the water. 8 hours with your head a metre above the water, you get wet, you get cold, you get tired, you get dehydrated, hungry, all of that stuff. But when I did it in 97, I got back in just under 8 hours, and I had a really good night's sleep. And I woke up the next morning and I thought, I could do that again. I could sail 60 miles, sleep, 60 miles, sleep, 60 miles. And this is the way my brain is wired. And I came up with this boat at this moment in time with my project, which is called Personal Everest. Personal Everest was going to be my attempt to become the first disabled sailor to sail single-handed, certainly severely disabled sailor, to sail single-handed in a one-man dinghy around Great Britain. It took 10 years to get from that previous photo to this photo. That's my wife, Elaine. There's my son, Tim, and 6 people who gave up their lives to come and help me achieve this incredible ambition, which in my mind, I knew it was doable. I knew I could sail 60 miles. You may see in that picture a funny cushion I'm sitting on. I have to be careful of pressure sores because I can't feel my backside. So if I sit on the wrong surface for too long, I can get a pressure ulcer. too bad and I can end up in hospital for weeks, months, sometimes years. Luckily, I've avoided them, but I have to be very careful. So I'd proven that I could sail 60 miles, have a good night's sleep, and I think I was up for doing it all together in going around Britain. And this was personal Everest. And this is, Raymarine had supported me in 92 when I went round, but this was an altogether different, when I went around the Isle of Wight, this was an altogether different animal completely. This was going to be 3 to 4 months away. You'll see the Land Rover behind us. There was also 2 motorhomes. It was a huge undertaking. This photo was taken about an hour after that photograph. It's Monday, May the 14th, 2007. This is it. This is the day that I set sail to become the first severely disabled sailor to sail single-handed around Great Britain in a little dinghy. Here I am powering down Southampton water, this great, huge adventure opening up before me. This was at 1 o'clock. This next photo is at 3 minutes past 1. So what happened? That's not a good photo. Sometimes when I speak live, there's like a murmured laugh. I think more of a gasp rather than a laugh. What had happened is a media boat had cut in front of my dinghy. It had caused my dinghy to broach, and I overbalanced and I fell out my dinghy. The life jacket didn't inflate, but that's another story. And here I was, seconds after starting this huge project, and here I was on a world stage, nearly drowned. It would not be an understatement or overstatement to say I probably felt worse about this than the day I had my accident. When I had my accident, I didn't really know what to expect. It was just a fluke. This was different. I put myself on a podium, on this pedestal, look at telling people, courting the press, courting sponsors to look at me. I was going to achieve this amazing thing. And then in full glare of the press and everybody, I nearly died. I was seconds from drowning, and it cut me to the core. It took a long time to regroup and get over that. But that's exactly what we did. We went home as a team. The sponsors and the crew unanimously agreed that they would, they wanted to continue their support for me. And so 7 days later, we fixed what went wrong. I'm not going to blame anyone. I should not have fallen out of that boat. Yachtsmen do not fall out of their boats. It was an oversight we hadn't thought of. And to be honest, far rather it happened there than somewhere in the North Sea, and I wasn't so lucky. So a few days later, we headed out, this time with no press boats. The weather was much calmer. I'm not going to show you loads and loads of pretty pictures of sailing around Britain. One night you can all come round mine and we'll spend a few hours going through them, but not tonight. I did want to show you a few images that kind of give you this sense of the isolation that I felt. I really am on my own now. I've got my chart plotter, I've got a VHF radio in through my Gecko headgear. I've got a water camel sack behind me. I've even got spare air cartridge in case I fall in and need to breathe. I'm on my own. I'm making those decisions. And despite my hands not working properly, you'll see that main is fully let out. It's an unstayed mast. It rotates through 360 degrees. And I'm running downwind, and this particular leg was a long, long leg. In fact, I think the next picture is an example. If my boat wasn't in it, I think you'd realise, actually, no, it's the next one coming up. This shows how difficult it was leaving in the early hours of the morning to make some of those journeys. Yeah, if my boat wasn't in that photo, you probably wouldn't even think it was a bad day. But this was one of those days from the Isle of Man to Scotland that took me 14 hours plus. I don't remember the last hour. When I did arrive, my hands and gums were bloodied. The reason my teeth were bloodied is because any sailor knows that when you're sailing a multi-hull, surfing downwind, there's a fear of pitch pole. So you sheet in, you sheet in, you sheet in, and you let out. Sheet in, sheet in, sheet in. Well, I can't grip with my hands, so I use my teeth to put the main sheet in my mouth, and I pull back on the main sheet and then release. So I was doing that for 14 hours, and Anyway, yeah, it was tough, cold, hungry, all that. But I'd tell me a sailor who hasn't been through that themselves. Logistically, I just got a couple of slides here. We talk about the sailing. Yeah, okay, it was tiring. It was 14-hour days at sea. I was cold. I was wet. They fed me pork pies and Mars bars, and it was all of that. It was logistically, it was so complicated. We went to 51 harbours. That's 51 starts, 51 stops. Sometimes at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, leaving, getting in after dark in the evening to these little tiny harbours around Great Britain. This was Ilfracombe in North Devon, where we had to leave at 4 in the morning to get the tide in order to get to Wales for there enough tide to carry me over the rocks that evening. This is Fishguard, where they had to use the Land Rover winch to tow me up the really, really steep slipway. And here is Berwick, where we had a crane fitted to the top of the Land Rover that was to lift me up and over the end of the pier so I could get in and out of my boat. After 109 days, I stagger myself when I say that, 109 days visiting 51 harbours around Great Britain, sailing 1,500 miles. I sailed back into Southampton water, bizarrely on the 5th of September. So at the time, it was the anniversary of my having my accident. It was an amazing recovery coming back. I don't expect you to count those. I promise you, there are 51 dots on that map. We went westabouts, and it was and it will be one of the most amazing things that I've ever done. Of course, what's the first thing you do when you get back? Elaine and I were able to celebrate. It was and will remain to be one of the most amazing adventures of my life. What did I do then? Well, I sort of decided now was time to write a book. Don't bother buying it; it's rubbish. As my son will tell you. In fact, I'm not sure you can. I think it's out of print now. It's somewhat demoralising buying them on eBay for 99 pence. Anyway, it's 99p well spent, 99 cents. I also travelled the world a lot. I spent the next year or two making a point of going back to the Virgin Islands. We went to Central America, talking to disabled kids and their centres where they were looked after, and it was interesting. A lot of these young disabled people were held back not by their own aspiration but by those around them. So being able to go and tell a really positive story about, you know what, okay, it's not going to be easy. I'm not suggesting anyone here could sail around Great Britain or across an Atlantic Ocean, but actually, there's a poverty of aspiration in this world, and with disabled people, and it's where they're told they can't do things from an early age. They don't even think about doing things over and above that bar. So I'm a great believer in knocking down some of those barriers. I showed you this picture right at the beginning. 17, 18 years old, great, fantastic. I did all of that as a young, able-bodied man. Anyone who's watching this, who's sailed an ocean, will know only too well how amazing it is to sail an ocean. That sense of insignificance, that sense of total overwhelming, being overwhelmed by nature. It can be 3,000 miles to the nearest land and 3 miles deep. Some nights with it so bright you can read a book. Dolphins appearing from nowhere like torpedoes with phosphorescence. And I decided I wanted to go back and do this again, but this time as a quadriplegic captain. Now, one thing I was going to need was a bigger boat. That little trimaran wasn't going to get across an ocean. And luckily for me, a very dear friend, a gentleman called Mike Brown. Mike owned this amazing beast. This is Impossible Dream. This is a 60-foot custom-built carbon fiber catamaran. Mike there is paraplegic and uses a wheelchair. And Mike had Impossible Dream built. You'll notice that she has roller-furled headsails. She also has a boom furling main. And you'll see in a minute, Mike also had all the instrumentation inside was to push buttons. So self-tailing winches, push button navigation, everything was push button. So I asked Mike if I could sail his boat across an ocean. Mike very generously allowed me to do that. And within 6 to 9 months, I'd found some extra sponsors. Needless to say, I was back out with a begging bowl for Raymarine. And we put the new project together, Personal Atlantic. For those that want a plan view, that's the plan view. That's the wheelchair accessible deck all the way around the wheelhouse. The yellow saloon area I converted to my bunk, so I was able to get some rest there. I can't look after myself. I can't get myself washed and dressed. I can't go to the loo on my own. I can't eat on my own, cook my own food. I can't do any of that. I've never been able to do that since I was 18. Elaine has done all of that, all of it, without anyone knowing, because we're quite private. But crossing Atlantic, I was going to need someone I could take to help me, and I was very fortunate. The gods were smiling on me. An amazing young lady called Susanna gave up 6 months of her life to come and be part of my project. Her specialism was she was skilled in spinal cord care. She wasn't a sailor, never professed to be, but she came to look after me on this voyage. And we also took a cameraman from the BBC, someone called Digby Fox, who's become an amazing friend over the years. And we went and did our training. God, that's an old shot of Paul.
Oh, wow.
This is a Raymarine HQ. There'll be people watching this going, my goodness, Geoff's aged better. Remember the suite of electronics we came and tested before we actually had it all installed on ID, and we headed out into that huge Atlantic Ocean again. It was different to Personal Everest. It was one start and one stop, but there were 3,000 miles in between. And I did virtually all of the sailing. I did the navigation. I did most of it. Obviously, there was autopilot, but there was issues with dirty fuel. We had to stop in the Cape Verdes to get that sorted. And then there was running out of fuel and all sorts of things. So it was tough on all of us. I'm not going to pretend it was any easier on anyone. It was really tough. But eventually, after 4 weeks, we managed to get the old girl back across the Atlantic Ocean. And that's the route that we took. And there could only be one port of call. There could only be one destination where I was going to drop that anchor. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Cane Garden Bay. I took that photo 1 hour before I broke my neck in 1984. So it's strange in many ways, but I can show this to you tonight as part of my story. It wasn't about closure. It wasn't about exercising demons. It was about celebrating the fact that despite my disability, that it demonstrating when you remove the barriers to participation, and that's an important part of my life story, when you remove those barriers, almost anything becomes possible, and surround yourself with really good people. And here I came in, crikey, I came in very late. It was something like the 9th of January or something, 2010. And we anchored in Cane Garden Bay. It really was an amazing day. I have that photo above me, above my desk here at home, just to remind me that, despite all the challenges in life, when you do succeed in something, it really is, those moments stay with you forever. I was very fortunate. I got back, and Her Majesty the Queen gave me an MBE for services to disabled sailing, which was amazing. The same year, I was nominated for what was the Raymarine Yachtsman of the Year trophy, and it's that lovely trophy to your left there. I wasn't successful that year. There's Dee Kafari with me behind me. I wasn't so successful that year, but the following year, I was to win what is widely regarded as the knighthood of yachting, and that was the Yachtsman of the Year trophy. And even more special was that one of my sailing heroes, Sir Robin Knox-Johnston, was there to present it to me. So although I don't have the real thing anymore, I've got a small model. It was without doubt the pinnacle of my yachting life to that point. So, without further ado, because I'm conscious of time, I'm taking far too long. What do I do? What have I been doing now? What floats my boat now? What gets me out of bed in the morning now? Well, I talked about those I'm noticing with around Britain and the Atlantic, recognizing that there were people who could not or did not want to go sailing, but people who wanted to get on the water. And if you strip out any snobbery between sailing better than power or power better than sailing, forget that, and your starting point is being on the water is what is special, then that's where I started to look at what the options were for people who did not or could not go sailing. And there were some options, but most of them were coastal, most of them were inland, or estuary stuff. I was talking about getting out on the water in a vessel that was coded for 10 passengers or more, so people could have a shared experience, mums, dads, brothers, sisters, that each trip could take up to 3 wheelchair users. And not only that, every wheelchair user could drive the boat. It was going to be another one of those conversations with Raymarine again. And over the next, so this is now 2011, I came up with this idea. And this is the very first Wetwheels boat that went on the water. She's a Cheetah power catamaran. She's built at Cheetah Marine on the Isle of Wight. She's 9 meters long. This particular picture shows her being powered by twin Suzuki 300 horsepower, and she weighs 4 tons and capable of speeds in excess of 30 knots. But it's not all about the speed, it's about that removing barriers to participation. So I am going to just now spend the last few minutes talking about how and what Wetwheels is and how we run it. So there you go. I mean, straight away, you're looking at a picture of the aft deck of Wetwheels, and there are 3 severely disabled young people in that photograph in big, heavy wheelchairs. They are secured to the deck using our bespoke securing strops, the wheelchairs, to hold them in place. And these are just one of many groups that come out with the Portsmouth Wetwheels boat and enjoy their trips with us. I'm also going to show you kind of the practicalities. So that's one at speed. That was Wetwheels Southwest, which was launched just over a year ago. And here you get an idea of how it's an opportunity for young people. If I talk about young people, we take people of all ages. I'll show some pics. And it is straightforward. It is keep it simple. We have an articulating ramp that goes between the pontoon and the boat. And we have a securing system for the chairs, and away we go. It's all ages. We're not going to discriminate on age. I love the fact the lady in yellow brought her own oxygen. She must have been on one of our trips before.
She heard about how exciting it was. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is that picture of the Needles again, funny enough, which is one of the scenic parts of the Isle of Wight. But I mentioned what makes Wetwheels unique. It's this ability to drive the boat. I don't know anywhere where someone with a severe disability can get under the wheel of a $250,000 worth of powerboat and get to drive it under, even if they can't hold the wheel, then we have different joystick options and all sorts. I should say the chap in the middle is my colleague Keith. Keith's got hold of the throttles. We hold the power at all time with the kill cord on. There's no issue there. But it's just the fact that this young chap he's from a local group, gets the opportunity with Dad and his family to come up the front and actually drive a Wetwheels boat. And it's those memories that last for a lifetime. For those that don't want to drive, just hanging out in the back. I think we've all been this young girl, haven't we, at some point? No matter what age we are, no matter what our challenges in life, we've all been that little girl. You've been on the back of the boat, sun shining, spray coming in, just soaking it up. Another great shot. This one's based in Portsmouth. There is a short video of this, which I'm not going to show, but I did a screen grab. I love this because this young girl, she couldn't see over the steering wheel, so she couldn't see where she was going. So we told her to put on her magic unicorn glasses. She said she had some magic unicorn glasses. So she popped on her magic unicorn glasses, and we fired up the Raymarine Axiom forward camera with AIS heads up. And she drove the boat using the Raymarine camera and AIS heads up. And she thought it was the best thing ever. And apparently it was the glasses that made that happen. So,
no doubt about it.
Absolutely. I think we all need pairs of unicorn glasses, Jim.
I like that.
So there you go. Look, Wetwheels, I told you we had one boat. One boat in year one took 400 people. The following year it took 800. The third year it took 1,200. Then we got another boat, and then we got another boat. And before you know it, we're collecting Wetwheels boats. Our patron of Wetwheels is Princess Anne. So she's the Queen's daughter. She is our patron, and that's Pete from Yorkshire. This was naming the Yorkshire boat. We now have, I need to update this. This shows 6 Wetwheels boats. So we have Wetwheels Southwest, top left, which is Falmouth. Wetwheels Yorkshire, top right, which is Whitby. Middle left, Wetwheels Southeast, which is Dover. Middle right, Wetwheels Hamble, near Southampton. Bottom left, Wetwheels Solent, which is Portsmouth. And bottom right, Wetwheels Jersey, which is not US Jersey. That is Wetwheels Jersey, as in the Channel Islands. And within the next 2 to 3 weeks, there's going to be another Wetwheels, and that's going to be Wetwheels Edinburgh, which is going to Scotland. We took Wetwheels Yorkshire to Scotland last year and proved there is a huge demand to have a Wetwheels boat there. Last year, Wetwheels boats collectively took 8,000 people on the water. And since we've been operating, we're getting close to nearly 35, 40,000 people we've managed to take on the water. We even got to London last year. A nice iconic photo of Wetwheels with the Tower of London behind us. So look, there you go. That really was a whistle-stop tour. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I'm hoping, I haven't even looked at the thing whether we've got any questions yet. But I love that photo. It just, to me, I know the guys involved, and it's what gets me out of bed in the morning. Some mornings I'm here at 6:30, 7 working at my computer, and it's a lovely sunny day, and I'm trying to raise money for Wetwheels, and that one just looks at me, and it's like, yeah, that's why I do what I do. So, without further ado, Jim, can you bring me back in the room?
I can. Wow. That is truly an amazing story, Geoff. And for everybody watching, if you have questions, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, feel free to chat questions in through whatever medium you are watching on. We will get them here in the studio, and we can pop them up on the screen. Geoff, that is a phenomenal number of people that you are able to share your joy of boating and sailing. It's just remarkable, all that you've been able to do in terms of sharing your passion with everybody in the UK.
I would caveat that, like all successful organisations, it's our people. We have those 6 operators just knock it out the park day in, day out. They're going in, out, with doing every one of them with an amazing story to tell. Every trip with an amazing story to tell. And meanwhile, in the background, my little hero is my little. I don't need demeaning, but Elaine, she really is little. She's 5 foot. Is my hero who keeps me going every day. So yeah, it's very rewarding, Jim, genuinely, and it doesn't I'm not trying to be altruistic about it. It's just the right thing to do. It passes the smell test, as we say.
Yeah, certainly does. And I think it's really cool that you're able to let people be hands-on too. They actually get to drive the boat. It's an experience that, many people that are in the boating community take it for granted, and people that get to come in and try it for the first time, it's just got to be a thrill. And like you said, it makes memories that just last forever.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean this most sincerely. I'm grateful that Raymarine have been on that journey with me. There's always been this lovely relationship with my partners, and there's never been a big ask in return. It's just you guys know we do the right thing, and and we just make it happen. And long may that continue.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about, is just being able to give back and to share this experience with people who otherwise would not get to experience it. Once again, if anybody has questions, feel free to chat them in through either Facebook or YouTube. They'll pop up right here in the studio. We'll keep the line open for another minute or so for any questions that anybody has.
And failing that, I'm always, you can always get hold of me through one of my handles at geoffholt.com or something like that.
Yes.
And, very happy to share those.
Yes, absolutely. And for those that are watching this after the fact, watching one of the recordings, because this video will live on for quite a while, if you do have questions, drop them in, because we here at Raymarine, we do keep track of all the questions posted to social media, and we will either answer it or we will reach out to Geoff and get you an answer, and get you in touch with Geoff and his organization if you would like to know more about it.
Great.
All right. Well, I think that's probably where we will close it down for today then, Geoff. Thank you very, very much for joining us and telling us your story. It really is remarkable. Oh, we did have a question just pop in. This is from someone named Europa 504 and would like to know,
volunteers.
Do you need volunteers? So,
well, we do. All the operators rely on volunteers to help crew our trips. We have our own bespoke disability awareness training in a maritime context. Lots of people do disability awareness training, but we have developed our own specific niche training around Wetwheels, and we ask people to attend one of those courses, and then you kind of go on the WhatsApp group for your local operator, and if they are needed volunteers, the WhatsApp group goes out, and those that respond first get to have an afternoon or a day on the boat helping do what we do.
Very good. Yeah, it's great to get that training and then get people involved. All right. Well, once again, Geoff, thank you for joining us today. And that's where we will end our broadcast today. For everybody watching at home, thank you for tuning in for Raymarine Live. We'll be back again with another episode. Until then, have a great time out on the water, and we will see you again soon. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Jim.